It started with a hammer strike, sharp and echoing through the hollow shell of the old train depot on the east side of Atlanta, a building so forgotten that vines had claimed its windows and time had buried its purpose. The workers had been there all morning, clearing out debris for a new development project, when the youngest of them, Isaiah Turner, struck a portion of concrete that didn't sound quite right. The wall gave way on the fourth hit, crumbling into a cloud of dust, and behind it, nestled in what looked like a man-made cavity, was something no one expected: a leather bag, darkened by age, its surface cracked like old skin, resting untouched for what looked like decades. "Hey, somebody come over here!" Isaiah's voice cracked through the dust. His gloved hand hovered over the bag, hesitating as though it might vanish. The others gathered slowly, cautiously, as if they had stumbled onto a grave. Isaiah reached out and lifted the flap with 2 fingers, and for a moment no one breathed. Inside was a gold chain, its pendant a tiny heart dulled with time but still gleaming under the overhead floodlights. A faded pink wallet sat beneath it, along with a compact mirror, a few tubes of lipstick, and then something that made Isaiah's heart seize. A university ID card. The name printed across the laminate was still clear: Amara Cole. For a second, silence choked the room. Then someone whispered, "Wait, is that the Amara Cole?" Isaiah swallowed. Everyone in the area, especially anyone over 30, knew the story. Amara Cole, a 22-year-old psychology student at Morehouse College, had gone missing in the fall of 2002 after seeing a movie at Regal Atlantic Station. She never made it home. Her case was one of the city's most painful cold trails, an open wound Atlanta never quite stopped bleeding from. The posters with her smiling face had faded long ago, but her name still lived like a ghost in the memory of the neighborhood. Isaiah backed away slowly, hand trembling, as he pulled out his phone. His fingers didn't dial 911. They moved with purpose, almost muscle memory. He dialed her, Vivian Cole, Amara's mother. The woman who, for 21 years, had kept her daughter's room untouched, had spoken her name at every City Hall vigil, who had whispered "not yet" every time someone offered her condolences. The phone rang twice. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was firm, wary. "Ms. Cole?" Isaiah's voice cracked. "My name's Isaiah. I'm a worker at the old depot on Edgewood. We think we found something that belonged to your daughter." There was a pause, so long he thought the line had dropped. Then, softly, like something breaking, Vivian whispered, "Where?" 30 minutes later, the air shifted. A silver Nissan Altima screeched into the construction lot, and from it emerged a woman who looked like she hadn't aged in 21 years, at least not in the way time intended. Vivian Cole's grey hair was tied back, her hands trembling as she walked, but her eyes were sharp, burning with a mother's fire. She didn't ask questions, she didn't scream. She walked straight to the table where Isaiah had laid out the contents of the bag, her breath catching as she picked up the gold chain. "I gave her this," she said, almost inaudibly, "on her 20th birthday." One by one she touched each item. The compact Amara never left home without. The lipstick they'd argued over, the shade was Crimson Truth, too bold for church, Vivian used to say. And then at the bottom of the bag, folded with an eerie precision, was a piece of yellowed paper. Isaiah had thought it was trash. Vivian unfolded it with the delicacy of unsealing a coffin. Written in faded ink, barely legible, were a set of coordinates and a single line: "If you find this, go there. That's where the truth is." Her knees buckled. Someone caught her before she hit the ground. "She left a message," Vivian whispered, her voice ragged. "After all these years, my baby left a message." That night, the bag was in evidence at Atlanta PD's Cold Case Division. Detective Marcus Vega, seasoned and weary after 2 decades on the force, stood over it under the sterile glow of the evidence room. He'd worked hundreds of forgotten files, but none haunted him like Amara's. He remembered the day her case hit his desk, how her photo felt like it was staring right through him. He had always known there was more to it than what was in the file. Now, maybe, they finally had a way forward. He called Vivian that night. "Ms. Cole, I'm reopening your daughter's case," he said. "But I need you to tell me everything, every detail, even the ones that never made it into the report." There was a long exhale.
"I've told this story so many times, Detective," she said. "To cops, to reporters, to God. But fine, one more time." She inhaled shakily. "It was October 19th, 2002. She was 22, my only child. She was supposed to see a movie with her best friend. A fantasy thing, I don't remember the name. But her friend cancelled last minute, so she said she'd go alone. I told her not to, but Amara, she had this stubborn streak." Vega nodded, scribbling in his notebook. "She left the house at 7:15. The show started at 8. I told her to text me when it ended, like always, but she never did. By 1 a.m. I knew something was wrong. The old reports confirmed it. Security footage showed Amara entering the theatre alone, buying a soda, and sitting in Theatre 6. The exit camera, however, had been malfunctioning. No one ever saw her leave, no eyewitness, no goodbye. Just a missing girl, and a city that slowly stopped asking what happened. But now Vega had something new: a bag, a note, coordinates, and a mother who had never stopped watching the door, waiting for the lock to turn. 21 years had passed, but the truth, it seemed, had never really left. It had just been buried, waiting for a wall to break. The note burned in Marcus Vega's mind all night. Coordinates, written in a young woman's trembling hand, preserved by time and fear. It wasn't just a clue, it was a whisper from the dead, begging to be heard. The next morning, under the pale Atlanta sky, Vega stood at the edge of the location marked by the numbers. It was a neglected strip of land just outside the industrial district, a fenced-off lot behind an abandoned auto garage, choked with weeds, scattered rusted tires, and ghosts of machinery left to decay. "Are we sure this is it?" asked Officer Ramirez, checking the GPS on his phone for the third time. Vega didn't respond. His eyes swept the terrain, noting the way the gravel formed unnatural rises, like something had been buried in haste. A faint breeze carried the scent of engine oil and neglect. Then a car door slammed. Vega turned to see Vivian Cole stepping out of the passenger side of a squad car. She had insisted on coming, despite Vega's reservations. Her resolve was written in the way she clutched her purse like a shield and kept walking even when her legs clearly trembled. "My daughter brought me here," she said softly. "Through that note. I'm not standing on the sidelines now." Vega nodded grimly and signaled the forensics team. They began scanning the ground with metal detectors, sweeping methodically across the terrain. For nearly an hour, the machines beeped at nothing more than beer cans and scrap wire. But then, near the edge of the lot, a detector shrieked, "We've got something!" The team dug carefully. Just beneath the surface, wrapped in black plastic and sealed with layers of duct tape, they unearthed a bundle. Vega crouched, heart hammering. The plastic peeled away, revealing clothing, a white blouse, delicately embroidered, and a faded denim skirt. Vivian gasped. "That's what she wore," she whispered. "We argued about it before she left. I told her the blouse was too thin for a night out alone." She just smiled and said, "It's Atlanta, Mama. Not the end of the world." But maybe it had been. The forensic pathologist, Dr. Yvonne Miles, examined the blouse and skirt with latex-gloved hands, noting dark stains across the fabric. "We'll run tests," she said gently. "But these appear to be blood." Vivian turned away, one hand over her mouth, her entire body trembling as she struggled not to collapse. Vega steadied her, feeling her pain crawl beneath his skin. "We're going to find out what happened," he said. "You have my word." A few feet away, another plastic-wrapped item was recovered. A shoe, a bracelet, and an old flip phone. But not the same model as the one found in the wall. This phone was older, scratched, the kind that barely stored messages. "That's not hers," Vivian said, puzzled. She had a silver Samsung, This is black. Vega examined it carefully. It looked remarkably intact for having been underground for over 2 decades. "Can we power this up?" Ramirez asked. Vega shook his head. "Not yet. Chain of custody. We take it in, scan it, recover everything. If this phone is here, someone put it here, and that someone was either covering their tracks or leaving us something." As they continued combing the area, Vega's own phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he answered. "Detective Vega?" The voice was familiar, soft, nervous. "This is Tamara Evans. I heard you reopened Amara's case." Vega's spine straightened. "Yes. What do you have for me?" A pause, then, "There's something I never told anyone. I was outside the theater that night. I saw her. I saw her leave. And she wasn't alone." Vega's blood went cold. "With whom?" "A man, white, mid-30s. I recognized him. He worked security at the theater. Leon Trammell." Silence pulsed in Vega's ear. He remembered that name. It was buried in the original files, mentioned once in passing. "Why didn't you say this before?" Because a week later he showed up at my apartment. He said if I ever told anyone I'd disappear just like her." Vega felt bile rise in his throat. "Miss Evans, I need you to come in. Today." "I will," she whispered. "But there's more. I think someone else was involved. Someone Amara trusted." That sentence crawled beneath Vega's skin like a splinter. When he hung up, the sun was beginning to dip below the Atlanta skyline, casting long shadows across the lot. In the fading light, the truth felt like it was just inches out of reach. "Bag her clothes," Vega told Dr. Miles. "Process the phone. I want a full report by morning." He turned to Vivian. "This is just the beginning." She met his gaze, and in her eyes was a storm of grief and fury swirling together like fire beneath water. "Then don't stop, Detective. Don't let her become a file again." He nodded. They wouldn't stop now, not after this. Because something had been unearthed that day, not just a bag, not just blood-stained clothes, but memory, evidence, and a second chance at justice. Amara Cole had spoken. Now it was time to listen. The next morning arrived with a fog that clung low over Atlanta, pressing against the glass windows of the cold case division like the breath of time itself. Detective Marcus Vega sat alone in the evidence room, staring at 2 things laid carefully before him. A grainy photograph of Amara Cole, radiant in her university hoodie, and the black flip phone found buried beside her clothes. The device sat inside a sealed evidence bag, but even through the plastic, it radiated weight, like it carried the last heartbeat of a story that had refused to die. Across the hall, Tamara Evans sat in interview room 3, her fingers nervously twisting the strap of her purse. She looked like she hadn't slept in years. Her makeup couldn't hide the shadows of old fear or the guilt stitched into her expression. Vega entered, offered no smile. Just a quiet nod. "Ms. Evans, I need you to tell me everything. Start from that night." She swallowed. "I was at Java Muse, cafe across from Regal Atlantic. I'd just finished a shift and stepped out to wait for my ride. That's when I saw Amara come out of the theater. It was close to 11:30. I remember because the streetlights had just flicked on." "Was she alone?" "No." Tamara's hands stilled. "She was talking to a man. White, tall, wore the theater's security uniform. I recognized him. Leon Trammell. I'd seen him before. He usually worked late shifts." "What were they doing?" "Talking. Arguing, I think." Then she looked uncertain, like she didn't want to go. But he pointed toward the back parking lot, and eventually she walked with him. I watched until they turned the corner behind the building. After that, I didn't see her again." Vega leaned forward. "Why didn't you come forward in 2002? Her eyes filled. "Because he came to my apartment 5 days later, knocked like it was nothing. Told me if I said a word I'd disappear like she did. I believed him. I was 19. I was scared. Vega nodded, but his mind was spinning. A bag hidden in a wall, clothes buried under coordinates, a phone not belonging to Amara. And now, a witness silenced for 2 decades. Did you ever tell anyone else? No, she whispered. But when I saw the news about the bag, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. After Tamara left under protective escort, Vega turned his attention to the phone. The tech lab had managed to boot it up using a specialized battery dock. What they found chilled him. The phone contained only 3 messages. The first, time-stamped 9:04 p.m., read, "Amara is leaving the movie alone. She's wearing white. This is your chance. Don't mess it up." The second, from 11:47 p.m., said, "It's done. Get rid of the phone like we said." The third was sent at 12:11 a.m. Just 3 words. Never happened. Understand? Vega stared at the screen. There were no saved contacts, no photos, no call history. Everything else had been wiped. But the SIM card, archaic as it was, still held one crucial piece of information, the registered account from 2002, the name Tamara Evans. Vega felt his stomach twist. It didn't make sense. She had come forward voluntarily. She had helped. But the phone was hers. Had she been helping or redirecting? He pulled the report on Leon Trammell. It showed a clean criminal record, scattered employment across security firms, always night shifts, always alone. What disturbed Vega was the detail that Leon's last known address was only 3 blocks from where Amara's bag had been found. Coincidence felt thinner with each step. Vega requested a warrant for Leon's former residence and personally led the team back to the abandoned house. They descended into the basement with flashlights, the beam revealing cracks, mold, old stains on the concrete. And then they saw it, a corner of the floor that had been re-poured, the cement newer, smoother than the rest. "Check this section," Vega ordered. A forensic tech began tapping the spot with a probe. The sound was hollow. "It's a cover," the tech confirmed. "Something's beneath." They broke through. Underneath the slab, wrapped in decaying plastic, was a small wooden chest. Inside, a handful of photos, a set of handcuffs, and, most importantly, a notebook, handwritten, pages stained with oil and fear. Vega flipped through it carefully. It wasn't Amara's handwriting, it was Leon's. His confessions began innocently, notes on shifts, gossip about co-workers, frustration at not being promoted. Then came the entries about her, about the girl who smiled too easily, about the friend who gave him the idea, about the messages, about the pressure. One entry, dated October 18, 2002, read, "Tam said Amara asked about me. She said she wanted to talk. She even gave me a time. I couldn't believe it." Another, on the night of Amara's disappearance. "Something felt off. Amara didn't look like she expected to see me. She backed away. Then Tam appeared. She had a tire iron. I didn't know what to do. She hit Amara once. Just once." I froze. Tam said if I didn't help, I'd be blamed. She had texts. She said I'd already looked guilty. I helped. God forgive me, I helped. Vega closed the notebook slowly. 2 decades of lies were collapsing, but one question still carved at his chest. Why? Why would Tamara do this? The answer, Vega suspected, wasn't about Amara. Not entirely. It was about someone else, someone above them. Because according to the log files from the theater, Leon wasn't supposed to be on duty that night. He'd been called in last minute, and the person who made that schedule change back in 2002 was a senior detective assigned to the Amara Cole case, a man named Clarence Mitchell. Vega's pen froze. He had read that name before, over and over in the original reports. Mitchell had led the investigation, filed every dead end, and closed it after 6 months of insufficient evidence. Vega's breath turned shallow. Because suddenly, it wasn't just about a girl who vanished. It was about the people who made sure no one ever found out why. The coordinates Amara left behind had led them to buried clothes, a second phone, and now a notebook of truths. But Vega had the sickening feeling that those coordinates were only the first key. and that the next door they opened would lead straight into something far darker. Because the closer they got to Amara, the more it became clear. She hadn't been silenced by a stranger. She had been erased by the system itself. The house sat at the edge of Westview, a decaying shadow of what once must have been a modest suburban dream. Its windows were boarded up with plywood, its lawn overgrown and wild, and a rusted mailbox leaned like a crooked finger, pointing nowhere. From the outside, it looked like a place time had forgotten, but Marcus Vega knew better. Time didn't forget. Time buried. He stood on the cracked sidewalk, watching as his team approached the door with caution. Leon Trammell had lived here for nearly 8 years after Amara's disappearance, slipping through background checks and cycling through low-level night jobs that kept him off the radar. He had vanished only days after the discovery of Amara's bag, abandoning this house like a criminal, fleeing a confession he never spoke aloud. "Ready?" Ramirez asked. Vega nodded. They breached the door. The air inside was stale, heavy, and unnaturally still. Dust hung like smoke in shafts of morning light, cutting through cracks in the plywood. Furniture sat beneath white sheets, frozen in time, but the silence wasn't just from abandonment, it was the silence of hiding. The team fanned out room by room. Nothing looked disturbed. Nothing screamed guilt. But Vega's instincts kept pulling him downward. The basement door stood slightly ajar. A cold draft breathed up from the darkness. "It's always the basement," Ramirez muttered, his voice low. They descended slowly. The walls were unfinished, bare concrete, splattered in old paint and something darker. A single bulb flickered from the ceiling. And then Vega saw it. One wall that didn't match the rest. A slab of newer concrete, lighter in tone, smoother in texture. A patch job meant to blend in, but failing under scrutiny. "Mark this section," Vega ordered. A forensic tech approached with ground radar equipment. After a moment, he looked up. "There's space behind it, and something dense." The team got to work. A sledgehammer rang out against the wall like a gunshot, and dust filled the air again, thick and choking. On the third strike, the concrete gave way. Behind it wasn't a crawl space or storage. It was a room, a small hand-built cell. And inside, Vega's breath caught, were photographs, dozens of them, pinned across the walls, faces of women caught mid-step, mid-sentence, mid-life. Some smiled unknowingly into the camera. Others looked frightened. At the center of the collage, larger than all the rest, was Amara Cole. Her eyes seemed to follow Vega as he stepped inside. The floor creaked under his boots. A folding table sat beneath the wall of photographs. On it, duct tape, ropes, gloves, a roll of trash bags, and a notepad filled with what looked like timestamps and initials. "He was documenting them," Ramirez whispered, disgusted. "Like trophies." "Like prey," Vega corrected. A forensic tech called out from the corner of the room. "Detective, you'll want to see this." Hidden beneath a loose floorboard was a second phone, this one older, more primitive. They also recovered a box tucked inside a rusted locker. Inside, a locket, strands of hair wrapped in tissue, and 3 driver's licenses. All women, all young, all missing. Vega's hands tightened into fists. "He wasn't just a pawn," he said quietly. "He became something else." And yet, even in the thick of this horror, something didn't sit right. Vega turned to one of the forensics officers. "Did you find any records of internet access? Laptops? Notes?" "No, sir. Nothing digital, no journals, nothing personal." "What about signs of recent occupancy?" The officer nodded. "Food wrappers upstairs, trash bags dated from just 2 weeks ago." Vega's stomach dropped. He was here, recently. As if summoned by the thought, Vega's phone buzzed. "Unknown number again." He answered. "Detective Vega," said the voice, sharp and rushed. "This is Vivian Cole." Vega's heart jumped. "Mrs. Cole, is everything—" "There's a man outside my house, says his name is Leon Trammell, says he wants to talk about my daughter." Vega's blood went cold. "Don't open the door," he ordered. "Stay inside. I'm on my way. Lock every window. Don't speak to him."
He said, "He knows where Amara is." The line went silent for a beat. Then, "Detective, what if it's true?" But the line cut before Vega could respond. "Get the units rolling now," he barked at Ramirez. "Code 3, Vivian Cole's residence." They raced across town, sirens splitting the midday air, lights flashing through red lights and traffic like they were chasing a ghost. When they arrived, they saw it, a faded blue pickup parked in front of Vivian's modest home, engine still warm. Inside, silhouettes moved behind the lace curtains. "She let him in," Vega whispered, heart sinking. They drew their weapons. "Front door," Vega ordered. "We go in silent. No chances." Ramirez nodded and flanked left as Vega crept to the porch. Inside, voices echoed, one soft and shaking, one low and wild. "You don't know what it was like," Leon was saying. "I didn't mean to. She wasn't supposed to die." "Where is my daughter?" Vivian's voice cracked. "Tell me now." "She's close," Leon whispered. "Closer than you think." Vega kicked the door in. "Police! Hands up!" Leon froze in the living room, arms slightly raised, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Vivian stood behind him, her hand clenched around the necklace she'd recovered. "Back away," Vega said, gun steady. "Don't do anything stupid." "I didn't kill her," Leon said, his voice shaking. "It was Tamara. She planned it all. I tried to stop it." "And yet she died anyway," Vega said coldly. "And you helped bury her." Leon's hands quivered. "I didn't know where to take her. I panicked. Tamara said we'd dig a fake site, hide her things, make it messy. But I never thought—" "Where is she, Leon?" Vega stepped closer. "Where is Amara?" For a moment, Leon looked almost lucid, almost broken. "She's where Tamara worked, where she could visit without suspicion, where no one would ever check." "Where?" Vega pressed. Leon's lips curled into a ghost of a smile. "She's in the place with no windows." And before Vega could stop him, Leon reached into his coat, not for a weapon, but for a notebook, and threw it across the floor. Then he whispered, "The truth is in the basement." Seconds later, he ran, out the back. Vega chased, but the yard was open and wild, and Leon vanished into the shadows like a man being swallowed by his own sins. Vega returned inside. Vivian stood silent, staring at the door. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She just whispered, "He said she's close. What does that mean?" Vega knelt to retrieve the notebook. The first page had only one line. "Where the cleaning lady takes her lunch break. Behind the wall she built herself." Vega stared at it. Because Tamara Evans had been working for the city maintenance department for the last 15 years at the very depot where Amara's bag was found. And suddenly the coordinates made sense. Not just as a breadcrumb, but as a map to a grave, hidden in plain sight. By the time Detective Marcus Vega returned to the department, night had fallen over Atlanta like a curtain drawn too tight. The streets outside were still slick from a sudden southern storm, and neon reflections shimmered in the puddles like ghosts walking backward. In his hands was the notebook Leon Trammell had thrown across Vivian's floor, its battered cover now evidence, its pages a key to something deeply buried. Vega didn't speak to anyone as he entered the cold case lab. He just pointed at a wall map, stuck a red pin into the old depot on Edgewood, and circled it with a black marker. "This is it," he said. "It's not just where the bag was found. It's where she is." Officer Ramirez looked up from his desk. "That place again?" "Yes," Vega replied, flipping open the notebook. "Leon said Tamara built the wall herself, and we already know she worked there as a janitor for over 15 years. She had keys, she had access, and more importantly, she had time." "So, what do we do?" Ramirez asked. Vega didn't answer immediately. He was staring at the handwriting on the page, cramped, panicked, but clear. The last entry read, "She said Amara had ruined everything, that if we didn't erase her, the truth would destroy us both. She made me believe we were victims, but I see it now.
We were her tools, and I think she loved someone else more than anyone ever knew. Vega felt it in his bones. Tamara hadn't just orchestrated this out of jealousy. She had been protecting someone. And now the puzzle pieces were beginning to settle into place, someone powerful enough to alter files, redirect suspicions, and vanish into retirement without a single charge. Clarence Mitchell, the original lead investigator, deceased for 3 years now, buried with honors, but not without blood on his hands. Vega took a breath. We go to the depot tonight, quietly. I want forensics, a camera unit, and that ground-penetrating radar. He turned to Ramirez. Tell no one. Not until we know for sure. Not until we find her. The depot was colder than Vega remembered. The silence was louder too, interrupted only by the click of boots and the buzz of static radios. The building's vast interior had been gutted, its platform rails torn out, its ticket booths reduced to rubble, but its foundation remained untouched. That's where Tamara had worked, cleaning floors, repainting walls, maintaining storage. She had vanished from the records a week ago, using sick leave no one had questioned. Vega's flashlight swept across a series of storage rooms along the back hallway. All of them empty, except one. This one had a faint metallic scent. The door creaked when opened. Inside, the concrete was pristine, fresh. Vega pointed. There, that wall. It was too clean, too smooth. The rest of the building had peeling paint and chipped surfaces. But here, the wall looked poured just months ago, maybe weeks. Break it, he said. The forensic team moved in, hammer against concrete, each strike echoing deeper. On the 5th swing, the surface cracked like a bone. On the 8th, a piece fell away, revealing darkness beyond. Vega stepped forward. Lights! Flashlights illuminated a narrow space, a chamber barely large enough to stand in. The air was dry, dead, and on the floor, surrounded by dust and silence, were the remains. Her remains. Dear God, whispered one of the techs. The skeleton was curled in a fetal position, the bones preserved by the lack of moisture. She was still wearing the white blouse her mother had described, still wearing the bracelet found in the garage. The forensic pathologist knelt in reverent silence. It's her, she whispered. It's Amara Cole. Vega didn't move, didn't speak. He just stared. 21 years of dust and bricks and false reports. And she had been here, right here, the whole time, behind a wall built by a woman who had once called herself Amara's friend. Behind the footsteps of every worker who walked this depot. Vega backed out of the chamber slowly. Vivian Cole was waiting outside the caution tape, wrapped in a coat 2 sizes too big, her eyes red but unflinching. Is it her? She asked. Vega didn't answer with words. He simply nodded. And in that moment, Vivian dropped to her knees, not in grief, but in release. She didn't scream, didn't sob. She just bowed her head and whispered, You're coming home, baby. Back at headquarters, Vega stared into the dim glow of his office. The case was cracking open faster than anyone had expected. Forensics confirmed trauma to the skull. Amara had died from a blow, likely the same one Leon had described. But there was something else. The autopsy had revealed signs of pregnancy. 3 months along, the child never had a chance. And it begged the question, who was the father? That night, Dr. Morales called Vega from the lab. Detective, he said, voice solemn. We ran the DNA. Amara was pregnant. But that's not all. Go on. There are signs, older injuries, bruises, scar tissue, some dating back months, possibly even a year. And... Morales paused. We found a match? A match? The fetal DNA. It points to a familial line in the law enforcement database. Vega felt his chest tighten. Who? Clarence Mitchell. The name struck like a thunderclap. Vega stood, the chair behind him groaning. He was her supervisor. And possibly more than that, Morales said grimly. I believe he was grooming her, using his power, and when he realized she was pregnant, he had to make it disappear. Vega closed his eyes. The case had just rewritten itself. This wasn't about jealousy, it wasn't about rage, it was a cover-up. A systematic erasure of a woman who had threatened a powerful man's illusion of control. And Tamara, she hadn't done it for herself. She had done it for him, out of devotion, out of blind, poisoned love. "One more thing," Morales said. "There's something you need to see. We recovered footage." "Footage?" "From the old theater, stored in a locker Leon kept. VHS tapes, surveillance he stole before he left the job." "And what's on them?" "Amara, in the weeks leading to her disappearance. And someone else. Someone watching her. Following her." "Who?" Vega whispered. "Clarence Mitchell." The line went quiet. Vega's heart thundered. The truth had been buried in concrete, in fear, in silence. But now it was clawing its way back to the surface. And the wall had finally broken. The tapes were grainy, their images flickering like old memories resisting revival. Vega sat alone in the viewing room, the only light coming from the monitor as the footage played, frame by haunting frame. The timestamp blinked. September 28th, 2002. In the corner of the screen, Amara Cole walked across the lobby of the Regal Atlantic Theatre, holding a drink, laughing at something unseen. A normal college girl on a normal evening, but the camera caught more than just Amara, it caught him. Detective Clarence Mitchell, watching from a distance. Standing just outside the exit door, half shielded by shadow, pretending to be part of the wall. At first glance it was nothing. A man in a coat. But frame by frame, as Vega advanced the recording, Mitchell's presence became a pattern. He was there the next night, and the one after, always at the edge of her path, always staring, and in one tape, October 10th, just 2 nights before she disappeared, he followed her out of frame. "Jesus," Vega whispered. The pieces weren't just falling into place anymore, they were screaming. Hours later, he sat across from Tamara Evans in a windowless interrogation room. Her wrists were cuffed, but her posture remained regal, like she was still in control of something no one else understood. "Why now?" Vega asked quietly. "You had 21 years. Why let the bag be found?" Tamara smiled faintly. "Because the truth was suffocating me, and because I'm dying." "From what?" "Cancer, stage 4, liver, maybe 6 months left." Her smile vanished. "I didn't want to carry him to the grave with me." "Mitchell?" Vega asked. Her eyes narrowed. "You figured it out then?" "He was the father of Amara's child," Vega said. "Wasn't he?" Tamara's silence was deafening. Her fingers tightened into fists. "He used us both," she whispered. "He promised me things. After it happened, after I told him about the pregnancy, he panicked. He said his career, his life, everything would be ruined, that she had to be silenced." Vega leaned in. "So, you helped him?" "No," she snapped. "I helped myself. He didn't ask me to do anything. He didn't have to. I knew what had to be done." "You manipulated Leon. You fed him lies." "Leon was a weak man," she hissed. "He'd follow any woman who looked his way. I made him believe Amara cared, that she wanted to talk, that she forgave him for watching her. I even told him she'd mentioned his name. He bought it like a fool." "And the night of the murder?" Tamara's voice dropped. "I waited near the parking lot. Leon walked her out. She saw me, and she knew. I saw it in her eyes. She tried to run, but I couldn't let her speak. Not after everything I'd risked. I hit her once, just once." Her lips trembled. She fell. I thought it was over. But when I went to hide the body, she was still breathing. Leon was panicking, crying. I told him we had no choice, that if she talked, both of us would go down. "So you buried her?" "I told him we'd dig a fake grave, that we'd hide her belongings at different sites. It was genius, really, made it look like a game of false leads." She exhaled shakily. "But I couldn't throw her away like trash. I needed her close, somewhere only I could visit, somewhere sacred." "That's why you entombed her in the depot," Vega said. Tamara nodded. "Behind the wall I built with my own hands, every lunch break.
one brick at a time. Across town, Vivian Cole sat in a quiet church sanctuary, her fingers wrapped around a photograph of Amara. The same photo she had handed out in front of grocery stores, police stations, schools. For 21 years it had been her torch in the dark. Now that her daughter had been found, the grief felt different. No longer a question mark, just an echo. "I wasn't ready for it to end," she told Pastor Hughes, who sat beside her in silence. "I wanted closure, but not like this." "You got the truth," he said gently. "Most people never do." "She deserved better," Vivian whispered. "She was kind, smart, she would have made a damn good therapist." She looked up, eyes full of fire. And he took that from her. Meanwhile, Vega returned to his office and opened the last entry in Leon's notebook. It was written shakily, like he'd been crying as he wrote. October 20th, 2002, Tamara came to me again. Said if I ever told the truth, she'd say I was the one who hurt Amara, that no one would believe I didn't touch her. But I didn't. I swear I didn't. There's something else, something she doesn't know I saw. After we buried Amara, I went back to the basement. I checked her pulse. I needed to know. That's when I saw the bruises on her arms. Old ones, not from Tamara, not from me, from someone else, a man she feared, someone she never named. Vega put the notebook down and stared at the crime board. Clarence Mitchell's photo sat in the center now, surrounded by string and scribbled notes. Tamara's name flanked his. Leon's sat lower, an accomplice manipulated into silence. But Vega's eyes focused on a question written in bold marker at the top. Who else knew? Because something about the case still stank of rot. Mitchell had died 3 years ago, supposedly of a heart attack. But Vega had seen the autopsy. There were inconsistencies, no toxicology, no investigation. The man who had covered up Amara's case had also been buried before the truth could reach him. Convenient. Too convenient. Then Ramirez burst in. "Detective, we just received a tip." "From whom?" "Vivian Cole." Vega stood. "What did she say?" "She found letters in Amara's old journals hidden beneath the floorboards, signed only with an initial M. And in one there was a pregnancy test." Vega's mouth went dry. "When did she find them?" "Today. She went home after the identification and couldn't sleep. Started tearing through the room." Vega grabbed his coat. "We're going back to the Cole house. Tonight. I want those letters." Ramirez paused at the door. "Do you think Mitchell was working alone?" Vega didn't answer right away. "I think Tamara loved a man who only used her, and I think that man didn't stop with Amara." He glanced at the board again. "And if he had help? Someone else in the department?" He clenched his fists. "We're not just solving a murder anymore, we're unraveling a legacy." And as Vega stepped back into the rain-soaked streets of Atlanta, he felt it for the first time since the case reopened. Fear. Because the closer they came to justice, the louder the silence became. And silence, in this city, had always meant someone was watching. The letters lay in a neat stack on Vivian Cole's kitchen table, each one folded delicately, as though Amara had wanted them preserved, even if she didn't know who would ever find them. Detective Vega hovered above them like a man about to open someone's soul. Each note was addressed vaguely. No names, just the beginning of thoughts, never meant for public eyes. But the language was intimate, coded in emotion. Some spoke of fear, others of loneliness. And one was unmistakably about betrayal. "I thought he respected me. I thought he cared about my future, my career. He said I was gifted." But then came the compliments that lingered too long, the touches that made my skin crawl, the invitations to discuss things privately. "I told Tamara. She said I was overreacting. She told me to be flattered. But I saw the way she looked at him when she thought I wasn't watching. The letter wasn't signed, but Vega didn't need a name. It was Amara's voice. And the he
was Clarence Mitchell. The M that had appeared on each envelope now burned through Vega's vision. It wasn't romantic. It was menacing, like a signature on a trapdoor. Vivian stood silently, watching Vega read the words she had never wanted to know. She tried to tell someone, she said, her voice low. She tried to ask for help, and her best friend told her to stay quiet. Vega set the papers down. No, Tamara didn't just tell her to be quiet, she turned it into a strategy. Back at headquarters, Vega reviewed the timeline again. It no longer felt like a random tragedy, it felt orchestrated. Tamara Evans had been calculating every step of this cover-up, not just for days or weeks, but for years. She had redirected the investigation from day one, planting herself as a concerned friend, when in fact she was the closest thing the case had to a mastermind. Vega remembered how she had walked into the station days earlier, soft-spoken, trembling, like a forgotten witness weighed down by guilt. But now that mask was off. In the interrogation room, Tamara no longer pretended. She sat poised, like a defendant who had already made peace with the verdict. "You said you did this for love," Vega said. "Was that love for Mitchell or for yourself?" Tamara's gaze didn't flicker. "Love is never clean, detective. It's layered, raw, twisted. You manipulated Leon, you lied to Amara, and you buried a pregnant woman in a wall like she was a stain." "I preserved her," Tamara corrected quietly. "Don't pretend you understand what it's like to love someone so much you destroy what threatens them." "You mean destroy a young woman who said no?" "She didn't just say no," Tamara hissed. "She was going to tell the world, take down everything. And you know how that ends. People don't believe black women. They believe the detectives in tailored suits and badges." Vega leaned forward. "You're a black woman, Tamara. And you helped silence one of your own." Something in her eyes cracked just for a moment. "I loved him," she whispered. "He said if Amara disappeared, we could finally be together. That she was using him. That I was the one he trusted." "And then?" Tamara's laugh was hollow. "Then he moved on, retired, left me to clean the same floors I built her grave behind." Vega stood slowly. "You weren't protecting him. You were erasing her. And in the process, you erased yourself." She didn't answer. The silence said more than words. Later that night, Vega couldn't sleep. The evidence was stacked high, but there were still shadows beneath it all. One final entry in Leon's notebook haunted him. Tamara kept something, a piece of her. Said it was a reminder, said if the time ever came, it would set everything straight. A piece of her. The next morning, Vega returned to the depot, this time with a search warrant not for the walls, but for the locker room where Tamara used to change during her shifts. Most of it had been cleared out months ago, but in the far corner, taped beneath a bench, was a steel tin. Inside, a small cassette tape, labeled only with the letter A. They rushed it to audio forensics. The tape hissed to life, and then, "My name is Amara Cole. If someone's hearing this, then I've gone missing, or worse." Her voice was fragile, frightened but calm, steady. "I'm making this because I don't know who I can trust anymore. Detective Mitchell has been inappropriate. I've tried to talk to Tamara, but she keeps defending him. I think she's in love with him, and I think he knows I'm pregnant." The room went silent. "I don't feel safe. I don't know who to call. But if anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident, and it wasn't just one person." Click. The tape ended. Vega sat back, the sound echoing in his ears. She had left a record, a voice beyond the grave. She had known they were coming for her, and still she spoke the truth. He walked down the corridor and found Vivian Cole waiting in the hallway. He handed her a copy of the tape. "She left this for you," he said. Vivian put on the headphones, listened. When the message finished, she took the headphones off, her face unreadable. "She knew," she whispered. "She always knew." The DA moved quickly. Tamara Evans was formally charged with second-degree murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and unlawful disposal of a body. The case rocked Atlanta, especially as details of Detective Mitchell's misconduct began to surface. 3 other women came forward. One confirmed a similar pattern of manipulation. Another had filed a complaint in 1999 that mysteriously disappeared. He had died with his secrets. But now the city finally knew his name for what it truly meant. Not protector, predator. Vega held a press conference 2 days later, announcing the reopening of every cold case Mitchell had ever touched. "We owe them more than headlines," he said. "We owe them truth." That night, Vega sat alone on a bench outside the depot, now sealed off and scheduled for demolition. The air was warm, crickets hummed in the grass, and for the first time, the silence felt different. Not hollow, just still. He closed his eyes and whispered her name. "Amara?" Some truths come too late, but some voices never stop speaking. And now, finally, the world was listening. 3 days after the charges against Tamara Evans were filed, a stillness fell over the city. Not the ordinary kind, the sort that follows a storm when all the power's been stripped from the air, but the kind that arrives when people are forced to sit with the ugly, irrevocable truth. The newspapers didn't just print Amara Cole's name, they printed her face, her story, her warning, her pregnancy, her final words. For the first time in 21 years, Atlanta said her name, not in whispers of "that girl who disappeared," but with the respect owed to someone who had tried, in vain, to save herself from the darkness that no one wanted to believe existed. Detective Marcus Vega had read her file 100 times, but now, holding it in his hands, it didn't feel like a case. It felt like a eulogy, unfinished, interrupted. One missing detail still gnawed at him. The final entry in Leon Trammell's journal had included a confession, but it also hinted at something else, a secret even Tamara didn't know, a truth buried in plain sight. Tamara thought she planned everything, but there was one thing she didn't see. Amara knew she was in danger. She left a message somewhere else too, for someone else, someone she trusted. If you're reading this, find the red box. The red box. Vega closed the file, stood, and turned toward the evidence room. Dozens of items had been logged since the beginning of the reopened investigation. Bags of soil, fragments of the wall, Amara's clothing, the cassette tape. But no red box. "Unless?" He called Ramirez. "Pull the item list from Amara's dorm room," he said. "The original search back in 2002. What was taken?" Ramirez read off the list. Books, laptop, clothes, backpack, one decorative jewelry box, red velvet exterior, contents unspecified. "Where is it?" "Logged as returned to family, but Vivian says she never got it." Vega's voice dropped. "Then someone kept it." That night, under the glow of a desk lamp, Vega reviewed the chain of custody report from 2002. The name that signed out the red box? Detective Clarence Mitchell. It was nearly midnight when Vega pulled into the overgrown driveway of Mitchell's old house, a colonial structure now covered in ivy and neglect. After the former detective's death, it had sat in probate limbo. No one claimed it, no one wanted to. The city had sealed it and left it to rot. But Vega had pulled strings and secured a warrant for a full forensic sweep. The front door creaked like a scream as they entered. Dust coated the furniture. Picture frames still hung crooked on the walls, and upstairs in the master bedroom closet, buried behind a shelf of untouched shoes, was a box. Small, velvet, red. Vega's heart beat heavy as he knelt, opened the lid, and found nothing except a photograph of Amara, standing outside her dorm, laughing, taken from a distance. And on the back, in shaky black ink, was a note. "You were always too good for me. I should have left you alone, but I couldn't." Beneath the photo was a folded sheet of paper. Vega opened it slowly, his breath caught in his throat. "To whoever finds this, I was afraid. But I wanted it known. I didn't consent. I didn't ask. He said he'd help me. Instead, he followed me, cornered me, hurt me. I told someone, but they didn't believe me. I think he's watching now. I think he'll make this go away, but if I disappear, please believe me." It was signed Amara Cole. Vega pressed the paper to his chest for a moment,
like it might still carry her warmth. "We believe you now," he whispered. The following morning, Vega stood at the courthouse steps as the press gathered, hungry for resolution. But what he offered wasn't sound bites, it was reckoning. "We failed Amara Cole in 2002. The system protected a predator. It ignored a woman who cried for help. But she left us the truth. She left it in walls, in journals, in whispers. And now it is our responsibility to carry her voice louder than the silence ever was." Vivian Cole stood beside him, dressed in black, head held high, her hand resting gently on a framed photo of her daughter. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. The world was crying for her. That afternoon, the mayor's office announced new reforms in how the city handles missing persons cases, especially involving black women. Amara's name was officially added to a memorial at City Hall. But something more meaningful happened in private. Vega returned to the crime lab and asked Dr. Morales for one final task. "Can we recover the baby's DNA?" he asked. Morales nodded. "We already have." "Then run it against the database again, not just Mitchell's line. Cross-reference every known associate, every detective in his circle, every friend, every relative. I want to make sure she didn't just suffer under one man's silence." That night, while the lab worked, Vega drove to the cemetery where Amara had finally been laid to rest. A modest grave, shaded by a blooming dogwood tree. Vivian had left fresh lilies there. Tucked beneath them was a note. It read, "I carried you for 9 months, but I've carried your memory for 21 years. And I will carry your voice for the rest of my life." Vega knelt. "They won't forget you," he said. He meant the city. He meant the system. He meant himself. And as he stood and looked out across the sleeping skyline of Atlanta, he thought, maybe justice didn't come in time for Amara Cole, but it would come for everyone who thought they had buried her for good. Because the dead don't stay silent. Not when their story is finally being heard. The lab results came back just after dawn. A single notification blinked on Detective Vega's phone, and when he opened it, the report glared back like an unspoken verdict. The fetal DNA didn't just match Clarence Mitchell, it matched another man in the system, someone who had never appeared in the investigation before, but who had shared blood with the former detective. Harold Mitchell, Clarence's younger brother, a city contractor, and, until recently, the structural supervisor in charge of municipal renovations across Atlanta, including the 2008 upgrades to the Edgewood Depot where Amara's body had been hidden. Vega stared at the name, stunned. A chill settled over him, not because he'd been wrong, but because he hadn't gone far enough. Clarence Mitchell may have died with secrets, but it was his brother who cemented them into the walls, literally. An hour later, Vega stood in the hallway outside the office of Harold Mitchell and Sons Construction. The firm operated out of a sleek, modernized warehouse on the west end of the city, far from the quiet rot of the depot. When Vega entered, Harold was already waiting. A tall man, mid-60s, polished, with a posture built from decades of command. He looked up from his desk slowly, recognizing Vega immediately. "You've been asking questions about my brother," Harold said. His tone was flat, unbothered. "You got a warrant?" "No," Vega replied, "but I have a body, a confession, and a dead girl whose DNA says you were part of the story." Harold's smile was thin, like a blade being unsheathed. "I'm afraid you've made a mistake." Vega pulled a photo from his folder. Amara standing outside her dorm, taken without her knowledge. Then another. Her remains recovered from the wall his company reinforced in 2008, long after she disappeared. "Tell me, Harold," Vega said, "what kind of contractor seals a cavity in a load-bearing wall and doesn't file a report?" "You're accusing me of what, detective?" "I'm accusing you of helping your brother bury a girl. I'm accusing you of pouring concrete over the truth, and I'm accusing you of being the one who got her pregnant." Harold's face finally cracked, not with guilt, but with rage. "You think this is about some teenage affair?" he snapped. "That girl was poison. She had Clarence wrapped around her little finger, playing innocent, threatening everything we built. He called me the night she told him she was pregnant, said she'd go public, ruin his pension, his legacy, The entire damned apartment. So you stepped in.
I fixed it, Harold said coldly. I always fix what Clarence breaks.
Vega stared at him. And what about the child, Harold? There was silence. Then, it was never born. Why should I care? That was the last thing Harold Mitchell said as a free man. Within the hour, a warrant was signed, his office searched, and his DNA formally matched to the fetus recovered from Amara Cole's remains. But what they found in the back room chilled Vega to his core. Stacked inside a rusted filing cabinet were 5 additional red folders, all marked with dates between 1998 and 2003, all labelled with women's initials, all detailing minor construction projects tied to abandoned properties, warehouses, closed schools, locations where women had gone missing, but where no one ever thought to search. Ramirez said it first. I think we're looking at a family business. Tamara Evans was brought into the interrogation room once more, this time looking older, weaker. Her cancer had begun to spread aggressively, and she now moved with the slow fragility of someone balancing on the edge of her own grave. Vega placed the 5 folders on the table in front of her.
She didn't open them. She didn't have to. I didn't know about the others, she said. I only knew about Amara.
Did you? Vega asked. Or did you just choose to believe Clarence when he said she was the only one who mattered? Tamara closed her eyes. I didn't want there to be more. I told myself I saved him, that I was keeping him whole. I didn't realize I was just another brick in the wall. Clarence lied to you. Harold used you. You weren't the woman behind the curtain, Tamara. You were the one being moved across the board. She looked up slowly. Then move me off it. I have nothing left. The press called it the Wall Conspiracy, a 20-year cover-up involving 2 brothers, a jilted accomplice, and the failure of an entire department to protect a young black woman whose only mistake was trusting the wrong men. But for Vivian Cole, there were no headlines, just a funeral, a headstone, and the unbearable stillness of a life that never got to bloom. 3 weeks after Harold Mitchell's arrest, Vega walked with her through the new memorial garden being built on the ruins of the old depot. Flowers had begun to bloom among the rubble. A plaque would soon be mounted there, not just for Amara, but for every woman silenced, discarded, or lost in systems built to forget them. Vivian stopped by a cherry tree just beginning to flower. You know, she said, she used to say she wanted to be the kind of therapist who believed people when no one else did. Vega looked up at the blossoms. She was that kind of person, even when no one listened. Vivian nodded, holding a folded piece of paper in her hand. Amara's last letter. She believed in healing, she whispered, even when the wounds were still open. And maybe, Vega thought, that's what this was now. Not justice, not closure, but the beginning of healing, because the walls they built to hide her had finally fallen. And in their place, something else had begun to grow. Memory, truth, and a promise, no more silence. The day the city finally said Amara Cole's name out loud was neither loud nor grand. There were no parades, no television crews clogging the streets, just a clear blue sky over Atlanta, and a silence that felt reverent, not forgotten. The kind of silence earned, not imposed. A small crowd gathered outside the newly built memorial garden on the former grounds of the Edgewood Depot, now transformed into a place of light and soil and soft wind instead of concrete and secrets. Detective Marcus Vega stood at the edge of the ceremony, not in uniform, not behind a podium. Just watching, listening. Vivian Cole was at the center, dressed in deep purple, the color of healing. She carried a framed photograph of Amara, smiling, radiant, young, and laid it gently beneath a newly unveiled bronze plaque. The inscription, embossed in clean serif letters, read, "In memory of Amara Cole, 1980-2002, daughter, student, unheard, until now. Let no wall, no silence, no power ever erase her again." There were speeches, of course. The mayor gave one, so did a civil rights attorney, a representative from the Black Women's Justice Coalition, and a young therapist who said she had applied to Morehouse because of Amara's legacy. But it was Vivian's words that wrapped around the crowd like a hush of wind. For 21 years I lived with not knowing, and sometimes not knowing is worse than death. But now I know. I know what happened. I know who failed her. I know who tried to erase her. And most importantly, I know she was never weak. She was strong enough to leave traces behind when no one was listening. My daughter is not a ghost. She's not a headline. She is a voice, a warning, a beacon. And from this day forward, she is history and she is future. The crowd didn't cheer. They stood quietly, some in tears. And Vega knew that was the sound of something sacred, something unbreakable. Back at the precinct, the fallout continued. The city had opened an internal review of every missing persons case investigated by Clarence Mitchell, and an entire task force, led by Vega, was assigned to cold cases that had once been dismissed without cause. New protocols were introduced. Anonymous reports were now tracked, not discarded. Officers under misconduct review would be suspended from casework, not reassigned. And a civilian-led oversight board was formed to ensure no voice went unheard because of race, gender, or age. But systems don't change because of policies, they change because of people. And Amara Cole, who never made it past her senior year of college, had done what entire departments failed to do, forced the city to listen. A week later, Vega received a package at his desk, no return address. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note. She wasn't the only one. Start at the school library archives, June 2001, follow the list. The handwriting was tight, neat, unfamiliar. But the message was clear. There were more women, more stories that had never been told. Vega clicked open the files, dozens of names, photos, dates, reports that had never been filed or had been buried before they reached a desk. It hit him like a wave. The case wasn't over. It had only cracked open. He picked up the phone and called Ramirez. "Clear your weekend," he said. "We're going back into the files." "You think it's legit?"
I think Amara's not the only girl whose voice got stolen.
That night, Vega returned to the garden alone. No crowds, no speeches, just the rustle of leaves under streetlights and the gentle hum of night. He stood in front of the plaque, ran his fingers over the engraved letters, and whispered something he hadn't dared to say until now.
"I'm sorry it took this long."
He sat on the bench across from her tree, the cherry tree that had been planted in her name. Small pink blossoms had begun to appear, and beneath that quiet he made a vow: every wall that hid a truth, I will break. Every silence that stole a voice, I will listen. Every file they tried to bury, I will open, because one girl left behind enough truth to outlive them all. And now it's her turn to be remembered.
Not for how she died, but for what she refused to let be forgotten.
Amara Cole,
Not lost. Found, heard, eternal.